I was quite rebellious as a teenager. So I left sort of school after my O levels. That ages me, doesn't it? And I actually did my A levels later on at night school.
The whole idea of Climb the Ladder is to share your kind of career today, share your experiences with the wider finance community, because we always get asked by people, how do I become a finance director, or how do I kind of climb the ladder? So first of all, please introduce yourself to everyone and give us an idea about your background.
So my name's Gayle Warren. I've been working in finance for 30 years. I've been a qualified accountant for coming up for 25 years. My career started actually in banking. I worked for a high street bank as a teller, sort of originally, before deciding to go to university to be able to further my career. And so I went to university as a mature student and studied accountancy and financial management with the intention of going back into banking afterwards. But the degree kind of spat me into the wonderful world of accountancy. I went into practice straight from university as a trainee chartered accountant. I did my first year of exams and so on, but I decided that practice really wasn't for me. I was spending most of my time working in an office on my own with a shoebox full of receipts, prepping accounts.
Yeah.
For things that had happened the previous year, doing some audit work, but again, constantly looking backwards was how I kind of felt, and very insulated. Whereas I'm much more of a people person, and I wanted to be able to sort of look forward and help a business move sort of forward. And granted, sort of, with the hindsight I have now, I was very junior in the accountancy practice, and it might have been different had I stayed there to be able to advise businesses. But I made the decision that I wanted to switch into industry. That's what I did, and I switched then to study SEMA rather than ACA. I worked my way through my exams, and with each kind of passing of exams, I wanted to sort of move up the career ladder at the same time. So with each sort of step up in my qualification, I made sure that I stepped up in my sort of ladder approach as well.
Yeah.
Changing jobs. So I changed jobs initially sort of every sort of 18 months or so to make sure that I got a really broad experience. So I started sort of as like an assistant management accountant, and a management accountant, financial accountant, finance manager, financial controller, a head of finance, and then ultimately became a sort of a finance director. I've worked in, because of that, I've worked in many, many industries. I've done everything from sort of working in manufacturing to I was part of the dot-com bubble when that happened. I've worked for a company that's partnered with the Royal Navy. I've worked in pharmaceuticals. I've worked in medical devices. My experience is broad, and quite deliberately so, because I feel that, the higher up you go within finance, it's important to have a broad spectrum of experience so you can bring experiences into the roles that you then sort of inhabit.
Was the intent, you mentioned the intention was to kind of go back to banking?
Yes.
Was the intention from when you were younger always to kind of get into banking and finance, or
No.
Yeah?
No, I was quite rebellious as a teenager.
Right.
And decided that I didn't want to stay in full-time education. So I left sort of school after my O levels. That ages me, doesn't it? And I actually did my A levels later on at night school before going to university. So having been a bit rebellious, so I quit education and went into the working world, and I started working in a bank. And so after a few years there, I then started to get a little bit frustrated because I kept seeing people come in, I'd train them up, and then they get promoted above me. And it kind of like, well, hang on a second, what's going on here? And it was because I didn't have the qualifications. So I went back to night school, as I said, and then ultimately university. But the plan originally was that I'd go back into banking, but it threw me into the wonderful world of accountancy instead. And then I stayed.
And you were a teller?
Yeah, so I was the cashier at the sort of front-facing cashier, and I did various sort of back office work as well. I was there for 6 years before I left university, so I did quite a bit of work. But yeah, very much the person that you see when you go into your bank in the high street.
And in terms of then like going through your career, what made you kind of, because more recently it's been manufacturing, if I'm right?
I started in manufacturing. My first job out of practice was a manufacturing company that made electric fires. And yeah, so I've touched on manufacturing sort of throughout my career. It's a little bit of a misnomer because although I have a ton of manufacturing on my CV, I've never been an actual manufacturing accountant. I've always been more on the commercial side of manufacturing rather than the cost accounting and so on. So.
And do you enjoy manufacturing as a sector as a whole? I know you mentioned you've not really been into it, but do you enjoy the kind of premise of it? You know, you're dealing with a bit more of a tangible kind of product and process.
Yeah, I mean, that is it. It is a very tangible sort of area of work. I mean, all businesses sort of, if you strip them back, there's a process going in. Oh, sorry, there's inputs, there's a process, and there's outputs. Sometimes they're tangible, like in manufacturing. Sometimes they're not tangible. Like in a .com company. Or a teaching company. I work for a teaching company as well. But they all follow the same process. But yeah, with manufacturing, you actually get to see something, a little product at the end of the day that so you can touch, you can hold. I've worked for electrical fire companies, pharmaceuticals, so childhood vaccinations, so little vials of vaccinations, contact lens company, and most recently a paper and plastic cup and lid company. So
wide range there. When you're recruiting and hiring for your team, do you look for people that have got qualifications? Is that important to you or not? And if so, why? Why is it important or not important?
It varies. I mean, some companies that I've worked for have insisted upon having qualifications. Personally, I don't place a huge amount of emphasis on qualifications. I think you can be qualified by experience just as well as. I think sometimes companies that focus on, we want to have somebody that's got a first class degree or an upper second degree, and then they must have qualified through practice. Or I think they are reducing the size of the pool that they're looking for the right person in. And as I say, I think you can be just as well qualified, experienced for the job if you've gone through the AAT route, which is more like an apprenticeship route, in my opinion, versus the degree. But I think the two are the same. Then you come out with the same amount of knowledge. The AAT person has got a lot more in-depth, having done the job, knowledge. I think sometimes, I speak from my experience going in through the academic route and going through the degree route. When I first went into industry, I'd never been, accounts payable or accounts receivable. It's hard then to manage people that you've not actually done the job. It's hard to put yourself in their shoes. I was quite fortunate in that one of my earlier management responsibility jobs was a small enterprise where it was very much all hands on deck. So, despite the fact I had like a financial controller job title, if needs be, I would be there posting invoices. It was, so that gave me the insight that I have in the other aspects of the work. So yes, so for me, I think qualification isn't necessarily my top thing I look for. I'm looking more for somebody who can demonstrate their ability to do the job, and obviously person fit and so on comes into play as well.
Would you say that you hire more based upon attitude or more based upon experience?
It's kind of a combination of both. I mean, I think you hire for attitude because you can train skill, if that makes sense. But as I said, if you've got the experience as well and can demonstrate that, then that makes you the perfect candidate.
Because sometimes you get people with all the experience in the world, but if their attitude is really poor, because pretty much every job you go into, you're going to be learning something, i.e. a new process, new sector, new ways of doing stuff. And if your attitude is not great, you're not really going to want to pick up and learn, are you? But then also, on the flip side, you probably need someone who's got a bit of experience to be able to teach them so they kind of pick it up a bit quicker as well.
And also, as well, I think from the candidate's perspective, I'd never want to do a job that I could do with my eyes shut. I can literally tick every single one of their boxes that they're looking for. I always want to have a learning experience for myself in a role that I go for. So for me, it's all about demonstrating that I can do sort of 90% of it, but that I'm really excited about that 10% that I haven't got experience or that I feel that, would help develop me as a person or as a professional. I think it's that combination of experience and attitude and willingness to learn and wanting to it's that hunger, it's that sort of fire in your belly type thing.
Yeah, definitely. You need that, and I think you demonstrate that with your career. Making sure that you kind of, if you're not getting it, moving every 18 months to a couple of years to make sure you're kind of getting that exposure and that kind of learning and that challenge as well.
Yes.
What are your kind of professional goals of the next 3 to 5 years, Gayle?
Well, first of all, at the moment I'm in between jobs. I took a redundancy earlier this year, so I'm taking a little bit of time out and now sort of looking to come back into the market. I would like to go back in kind of at the sort of head of finance director type level. I very much enjoy sort of running a team, mentoring people, managing, working with the business, helping the business to move forward. That was my main driver for coming out of practice, was to be able to be that sort of catalyst to help a business to keep moving forward in a positive way. So I guess that's my immediate ambition, is to find the right role that I can do that with, and then yes, just kind of continue to make a difference. For me, that's what drives me. That's what gets me up in the morning, is the thought that I will go to work and sometimes accountancy can have its dull moments, but it's all about finding those little sort of wins, those positives, and so for me it's very much that interaction with the business. It's that seeing the impact of a piece of advice that you've given or some data that you've produced actually then being used and used in a positive way.
And if you hadn't ended up in finance, what do you reckon you'd be doing right now?
I can tell you what I am doing right now. I have a huge passion for animals. I have several pets myself, and I'm always looking to expand on that, much to my husband's sort of annoyance sometimes. But at the moment, I'm volunteering at a local donkey sanctuary, so I thoroughly enjoy kind of working with big animals, with the equine animals. I do all sorts there, from mucking out to meeting the public and interacting with the public and doing talks and that sort of thing. So I guess, as it stands at the moment, if I wasn't what I'm doing now, I would definitely want to be doing something with animals. Whether I would have chosen, a vet path or something, I don't know. That's the beauty of hindsight. But certainly, my love of animals, I think, would have been something that I would have been working with. Yeah.
And what pets have you got, Gayle? Sounds like you've got.
I've got currently I've got a dog, a cat, I have several fish, and I'm just about to get a tortoise.
Okay, the tortoise is a bit different. What made you want to get a tortoise?
I had one as a child and very much enjoyed having one there. And then obviously where I work with a sanctuary, we are in touch with other sanctuaries, and they notified us that they had some tortoises. They don't publicise tortoises because of the trade in them, but they contacted us, and then I went forward and said that I would be very willing to have another tortoise. So but in my past I've had exotic frogs. What
kind of frogs?
I've had various dogs and cats. Always had an animal in the house. But yes, we've had everything from sort of snakes to, say, frogs to locusts. Inside fish, outside fish.
And last question: what job do you reckon you would not be good at, or generally sort of quite bad at, in your opinion?
I hugely admire teachers, because I know that I couldn't do that. I love kind of, as I say, managing a team, mentoring a team, and developing a team. But I couldn't teach a room full of children. That I think would be where my patience would run out. And so I have huge respect for teachers. So that's definitely something I couldn't do.
I think I'm the same, to be fair. I think I have a huge amount of respect for teachers. I think they've got a lot of patience for that, and they're very admirable in what they're doing. But right, well, thank you so much for sparing us some of your time.